computer.
Yeah.
Okay. It's going there.
Yeah.
And then yeah, we'll talk for about like 45 minutes to an hour. So
Sure.
yeah. So I'll just like put on my podcaster persona now.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Oh, and then there's like a couple things I think if you could just later this week drop me a picture and a little short bio, and then
Yeah,
also
I
and
got
if you okay, great. And if we need to pause or stop or like with anything, I edit everything. And do I obviously call you Mayank? Is that how you prefer to be addressed in the episode title to be Mayank,
sure.
or
Yeah.
like and
Yeah.
just Mayank one word, or like Mayank Malcolm Reed? Like everyone has kind of different ways they prefer
Oh, okay.
publicly to be listed
Yeah,
as.
yeah, yeah. I don't know. Mayank's good. Most people here know me as Mayank. Mostly on
Mm-hmm.
the website, I'm just Mayank.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really use my social media much anymore, so
I'll
Mayank's
tag
yeah,
okay,
Mayank's
Mayank.
good. Yeah, yeah, Mayank's good. And
Great. And
you're using Garima quite much more now, Garima.
I use it with my shamps and I used it in Kulu, but like not no one else.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah,
But
yeah,
definitely
yeah.
like yeah, in
You're
Kulu
making
for
a
sure.
transition.
Yeah, it's kind of like it's still private though, like it's still kind of it's still like in my heart. But like
Yeah.
outwardly, I'm still like I think it would be a while before. But
Okay.
I've been embracing the Garima, like because
Yeah.
Swamiji would say Garima the greatness in the letters.
Right.
So that's my
Yeah.
superhero name.
Yeah. Yeah, cool.
Like uh, Superman puts on his cape, I put on Garima and go into the world.
Yeah, because it means like capable and honest, and is that
Well,
right?
yeah, it's
Like,
like how Swami said it was the glory of the self.
oh, well, yeah, he took it right to the top.
Yeah. And then what else was I gonna say? I forget. Anyways, if it comes to me, I'll say it.
Yeah, cool.
All right, so here we go. All right, so welcome, Mayank, to a Curious Yogi podcast.
Nice to be here. Thank you. Lovely to
It's
be here.
it's so wonderful to connect with you after a long time since we've seen each other face to face. We're obviously on Zoom now. You're in New Zealand, I'm in Sweden,
Yeah.
but we've been connected for many years, and I'm so excited that you agreed to come on the podcast. And I know you just have a lifetime of lived wisdom and knowledge of dedicating your life to your sadhana and your meditation practice, and now sharing it with so many wonderful people. So I'm just really happy to have you here. Thanks for giving
Mm,
me your energy and your time.
mm, mm. Pleasure, pleasure. Yeah.
Hmm. So I love to just start out the episodes and the conversations by just, even though actually, and this will be new for me because I've known you for a long
Mm,
time, but I don't know really your kind of story. What was it that brought you into living uh and studying the life that you've chosen to live, living in India for many years, and getting attracted to
mm.
satsang and knowledge and the real essence of life? Like what brought you into this way of living so long ago? Being from New Zealand, you could have chosen a very different path.
Yeah, yeah. And it's interesting. I think I'm one of those people. I mean, I think everybody has their story and how it happened for them. And if I look back now, because in hindsight, when you look back, you realize, oh my gosh, like how did that happen? And I realize I didn't have a strong desire. I never saw myself following a spiritual path. I never saw myself definitely going and living a life in India. It was never on my radar. I never even felt like I was searching really in particular. But I did come from I had a religious upbringing, of course. My father was a Presbyterian minister, and I was brought up in a very loving, I had a very loving, supportive family life, and my siblings and I, we all get on. So there was nothing pushing me to look beyond what I had. But I look back now and I realize there was kind of this fascination with what I would call now the human condition, and why are people like they are, and why do people think the way they think. I realized that was hovering there. And my mother was a marriage guidance counselor for many years when I was in my late teens, going into my early 20s. And we started having these quite philosophical conversations about human nature. And that was probably, if I look back now, my first inklings that there was something percolating in there, which was creating interest. And then in my years at Teachers College, which was a very much stepping out of myself into a world of drama and music, not dramas, like, I mean, theatre drama and music and self-expression. And that was a real opening for me from the kind of high schooling that I'd had and the kind of life that I'd had. It was kind of a very free and open and creative time. And there I met Shikhaa, who you've had on your podcast, and who is my teaching partner. And she was the one who first actually introduced me to the idea of, firstly, vegetarianism and then meditation. She was really looking. It was kind of, I, in a way, got pulled into the slipstream of her search. And then, to cut a long story short, when she ended up in India, some seed had been planted that then really took root, that I was suddenly like, meditation. Actually, I'm not doing it just because she was doing it. I really want to keep doing this. And I was attracted to keep up that connection with her good friend Mukta at that time. And then within a year, circumstances aligned, and I felt drawn to go to India and meet Sham. And it was really, if I look, it was kind of happening. I didn't really do it. That was the kind of, that's the kind of sense I have looking back now. Like, how did that all happen? And I realized I never really did it. And it's that classic quote that people often say, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And I guess there was something in me that was just really, even though my logical day-to-day relative thinking mind didn't really realize what was going on, but something deep inside of me was drawing me to that place in India and to that space. Because when I landed there, everything in me just went, oh, I love this. The moment I touched down in India, I was just like, oh my God. And then when I met Swamiji, it just seemed like the most natural thing. It just seemed so like, oh yeah, a realized being, amazing, like, wow. And I look back now and I think I was just a kid, really. I was 26. You feel like when you've lived everything and you're such a person at the world in 26. I look back now, I was really just such a little kid. I've gone back and heard myself interacting with Swamiji way back in that first trip. And, it just makes me chuckle. And because I'm so sweetly naive about anything, really. And I was very naive, innocent's a better word, about anything to do with spirituality, really. I really had no concepts. And I remember some of the people who'd been around Swamiji for a while, when I came, I said, look, I know nothing. I don't even understand half of what Swamiji's talking. I mean, all of this is, and I've had no experience. I don't know anything. And they would all say, oh, you're so lucky. You're coming with a clean slate. A lot of them felt like they came with a lot of spiritual baggage that had to be cleared away. And I came very innocent and unknowing, really. But what I did know that was, when I left there after 3 months, my head had been turned inside out, and I just was unable to see life in the world in the same way again. It just, something got opened. The vision of oneness got opened, and everything that I hadn't even realized that I felt confused about within, suddenly there was a sort of a clarity on it, and a sense of understanding permeated it all, and there wasn't that kind of underlying confusion about my place in the world and what I was meant to do with my life, and what was all these things happening around me, and why were some people like this and some people like that. All of those things started to drop into the great wonder of life in a way that didn't conflict with me anymore, and I felt I could sit with all that and just let things be as they were. And that, of course, that's a really nice place to be, when you start feeling that, so yeah, that's how I ended up there. And I guess, so that was a short trip at the beginning, and then I came back home to New Zealand. I continued working and playing music, with a definite goal that I just wanted to get back to India for a year, 2 years if I could, which I did. I kind of sacrificed everything. Such was my desire, that my focus and attention was so one-pointed that, of course, when you put that much focus and attention on anything, it's going to manifest, and it did. And that 2 years turned into 37, and that was just, now that's a wonder. How did that happen? I have no idea. But again, I guess that was just the power of my intention and my focus, that I really wanted. I knew that that's where I wanted to be, and a lot of help and support from my parents. I've got to say, they made it happen, because my mother was very, very excited when I first went there, and she wanted to hear all about it. And then she later, of course, became a student of Swamiji's also, as did my father. Once he retired and felt stepped away from the church in his retirement, then he felt that he could safely come and sit with Swamiji, which he did. And of course, those were wonderful years for them also. All the times they came and visited, I think 7 or 8 or 9 times over the years they came. And so yeah, it was a family affair. I was very lucky, one of the lucky ones whose parents jumped on board and just were there, and were relishing this wonderful opportunity that we had to sit with a being like that, and to go deep into the real essence of life, of existence. Yeah.
Beautiful. Wow. So interesting. There's a few things there I want to ask you about. And even when you were speaking, like hearing how like the desire, and how you were talking about like the power when one puts that one pointed attention. And I was thinking of, in light of knowledge, how it says to reach realization, we need to have that real energy and that desire for freedom. And once it gets like sparked up within one, and like even here, I can feel myself in your story, that the clarity that came from that which you didn't even know you were confused about. Like I had that similar experience, and I'm actually wondering a little bit about maybe just your experience, or even speaking to when your parents became students of Swamiji's. Like, did you have any kind of confusion or contemplation about coming from a Christian background? Because I also came from a Christian background. I remember even having to kind of reconcile even the language, because there is a sense of spirituality in any religion, of course, if you're a spiritually inclined person. But how did you kind of bring the worlds that you grew
Yeah.
up in to this now vaster understanding of what is God, what is spirituality in your own life and in your own sadhana?
Right. Yeah. I nearly veered into that when I was talking, and I thought, well, I won't go there. As it says, it's a good question, and it's a good topic, and maybe for a lot of people who are listening, Now, it is an interesting story. So first of all, I guess I need to say that my father was a very unique Presbyterian minister, in that even his contemporaries used to say, "Oh, that Lester Reed, he's very out of the box." So he was a very open thinker. He wasn't a dogmatic religious minister by any means. He was a very loving, kind, compassionate man, and very well read. And after I'd been to India at one point, somebody had put me on to Yogananda's book, Man's Eternal Quest, and Autobiography of a Yogi. And one day my dad saw it sitting there, and he just said, "Oh yes, I read that book about 10 years ago." And I was like, "What? you, you read this and you never told me?" But he was a wide reading. He read a lot of things. So he was very open to the spirit in all its forms, and how it came. And he brought that to the pulpit when he gave his sermons too. He definitely wasn't formulaic. So I was very lucky in the sense that that was always an open space in my upbringing. But nevertheless, I walked away very confused from Christianity at around 17. And I actually declared to my father, when I felt at that age, because I was kind of feeling rebellious, and I said, I don't want to really go to church anymore. It doesn't make sense for me. And he just said, "Okay, yeah, you're old enough to make that decision now." And at that time, I said to him, this is no reflection on you. I was mature enough to say, I'm not rejecting you or who you are or what you've done with your life. I said, this is not working for me. I'm not getting anything from this. I'm 17. I'd rather be out with my friends on a Sunday night, not going to youth group. That was step forward to coming back after my first trip to India. And even I met people in India at the Hermitage who, of course, had also come from the Christian background, who started pushing some wonderful books in my direction. The Nagamari text, sorry, I've forgotten the name of that. The Gnostic Gospels, all those sorts of more esoteric writings that came out of the biblical era, which had so much more depth in them, and which were talking very much like the Vedas and the Upanishads do about this all-powerful, all-encompassing self. And so I started realizing that this word God, which had become a little bit tainted in my head and a little bit full of concepts, and even Swamiji in those days used to use the word God, and I would feel a kind of like, oh, inside, like, oh, no, I didn't come here for God talk, There was something in me rebelled against that for many years. I didn't want to hear it, and it made me uncomfortable. But slowly and slowly, I managed to I changed my own thinking and idea about it. I came to understand it's just a word, and my reaction is because that word has been built in such a way that I have a definite concept about what that is, and it's been kind of laid on me, and I've reinforced it with my own thinking and understanding. And now it's time for that concept to fall away and for something new to take its place, something new and much bigger and more glorious. And so I was able to get over that in time, and also to go back and read the New Testament. Actually, while I was in India, I went back and reread it and saw the jewels that were there, the wonderful teachings that had been kind of lost in the metaphor of direct dogma, really. People who took the stories and said it's true, rather than, as we see reading the Indian scriptures, we see it's all metaphor and analogy for something much bigger and greater. And I realized, oh yes, this is, there's actually a definite skill and an art to reading any scripture, to not get caught in the actual the words or the stories, let's say, and to see what's being pointed at. What is the point in here? What's this directing me towards? What's this an analogy of? who is the poor man in this story, or what, all the different characters are really just an example or giving life or animation to a human condition that gives us a chance to examine it and see that, oh, this is actually divinity at play here, or that sort of idea. So yes, I did have to work a certain amount in those early days, and then of course it was wonderful when my father came. Swamiji was always encouraging him to come up and bring your questions, anything from the Bible, which he did many times, and he asked about a lot of the parables or a lot of the quotes. And so that was, fascinating to hear Swamiji elucidating and giving the realized vision on some of those stories and quotes, which was, just marvelous, Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah, it's so kind of interesting how even any kind of religion or any kind of path can be divisive if that's the way the mind is pulling it. But yet, in that, like you said right at the beginning, like the expanded vision of oneness, where we can sort of see that all rivers lead to the same ocean. Like if we have the expanded view with the way that we read or listen or interpret any kind of spiritual content, if you will, that's coming into the being. And I also feel that something that really inspired me with Swamiji, that he was open in that way, or is open in that way, to take any opportunity to go to the highest. Yeah. And like I'm wondering, I guess too, because I always ask questions from where I'm at with my own practice or my own kind of happenings. And I've been thinking a little bit about, we have in the way that, we have meditation, we have scriptures, we have all these tools with satsang to expand that vision of oneness, to expand our spiritual life. And I guess my mind is kind of saying, like, we have to take all these kind of elements. There is an element of devotion or kind of faith, that shraddha, like real faith. But also, like when you were speaking, I was thinking, wow, like how also important it is to have critical thinking. Like we can't just take things at face value. We also have to churn it for ourselves, and like you said, use our own thinking. So there's that. There's like the trust, that faith, and there's the autonomy, there's the will to actually churn the knowledge. Like what's been your experience of having those two aspects in your practice, in your life, really?
Yeah, no, you're very true, very wise words, nicely said. It's so true. There has to be that balance. And Swamiji often said that, and I know various people on your podcast have always come up with that beautiful saying that you need the two wings of the bird, and one is Gyan and the other is Dhyan, or often it's Vivek and Vairagya. So Gyan and Dhyan, meaning you have to have knowledge, as you said, that kind of sharp, inquiring, questioning mind, not just accepting what somebody says and going, oh yes, now I've got a new belief and I'm going to live my life according to this belief. It's like, first of all, do I understand this? And then how can I dig this? How can this churn an understanding out of me? So it's not just an idea, it's actually something I'm actually experiencing and seeing for myself. And then on the other side, you've got Dhyan, which means actually the meditation on that, not just sitting and, like really devouring it. Shikhaa often, the other day, she gave the example, it's so good. You don't just cook the food, you have to eat it, and then you have to digest it. So meditation is like the digesting it. And the scriptures are kind of like the recipe and reading it. And there's also those beautiful words that we use, Shravan Manan and Nididhyasan, which is that first you have to hear it, then manan is like the mulling it over, like churning it, percolating it in your thinking about it. That's the gyan, the hearing it and the thinking about it. And then there's the nididhyasana, the internalizing it. Like, okay, you start, I know this as a kind of an idea. Now, when you're in your life, how do you express this? How does it manifest in your life? Like, so it comes from within. It's not just an idea. It's moving it down into the deeper essence of your being, and a deep knowingness and a deep reflection of who you become, what you become. So yeah, I mean, I'm lucky that I've also incarnated in a form which seems to have a very, very balanced outlook on life. I'm very moderate in all things, and I can be quite consistent in many things. And, you know, after all these years of meditation, I can look at this vehicle now and say, okay, yeah, this, I've got these qualities, and this actually works for me. And I know it's not like that for everyone, you know, so we've all got to work with what we've got. And I have my tendencies and my weaknesses, I guess. You know, sometimes I can be too much. I sometimes feel I can be too much the jack of many, many trades. I can spread myself very thin. I get so excited about lots and lots of different things. And I sometimes feel like I should just rein it in and just focus on a few more things, a few less things, I mean, and you know, give them a bit more attention. So you become a master of few rather than jack of many. But that's just a little, you know, a little play of my own observation about this body personality. Where did we start from? What was the two things that you initially asked me about?
Mm. Well, you really were hitting the points. I was asking
Oh,
about
that's
like
good.
the
Okay.
critical thinking and the faith, and then I loved how you brought it into
Oh,
those.
yes. Yeah.
And even kind of, and maybe I'm getting stuck on my own language here, but like you know, you were talking before about your father and the way he read, and even the way you are, and like kind of this the lived kind of philosophy of
Right.
Vedanta and of meditation. Like we
Mm.
have now, I'm kind of segueing into something else because kind of more questions are coming. But like you know, we have you know all these pillars, if you will, of a spiritual life, and we are so blessed and like to have satsang community, to have
Mm.
meditation practice, to have the vision of a realized teacher. And then it's like I guess too, it's like where I'm at this phase in my life where I'm observing my own system and my system in the world and my system, you know, so this is coming from my own place, I guess. But it's like we have all these tools, and then what happens when, I mean, in your experience, when you open your eyes and you go out into all of the things that inspire you, and you know, when I open my eyes and it's like I can see the sort of permeation of the meditation practice. It does slowly sort of change the system kind of. I've been meditating regularly for 10 years. You're it's not linear, but you're a few steps ahead of me, my
Mm.
but like how to live the practice, like to really apply it. And I know the listeners, like that's everybody's it's
Yeah.
kind of the question eternal, like how do we take these practices that we have in the privacy of our own heart or community and
Yeah.
take them out into the lived world where someone's gonna cut you off in traffic. This is gonna
Mhm.
go wrong. Yesterday, I forgot my keys, so I had to take 3 hours train back and forth. You know, like
Oh,
something will inevitably rip
yeah.
the rug out from under the shant state, and it's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
where do we go from there, Mayank?
Yeah. Yeah. It's never all going to be shanty shanty, man. It just doesn't go like that. But are you at peace underneath that? I think that's often the thing, that we think that our peaceful state should look like something, or it should feel like something, and it's way deeper than that. That's how I've come to see it. And you're right. It's a slow maturing. There's no shortcut to that maturing. And that's why it's you have to play the long game with your spiritual practice, because it's not just something you choose even for 10 years. It's something that has to become deeply part of your commitment to your life for a lifetime, and all of the stuff is going to come through that lifetime. We all have to go through what we have to go through, but can we go through with a spiritual perspective? Can we go through with a perspective of self, that underlies all of the turbulence that can happen for the human being, for the human waking state? And what happens is that you start to see that you really are just living a waking state that is kind of imposed on top of who you really are. It's like the analogy of the movie on the screen. You're the screen. You're always the canvas. You're always the underlying canvas or screen of your life. You're the constant. And that constant is at peace. There is always Shant there. And the more you can build a relationship with that, the less the colors and the characters on the screen affect you are less reliant on them for your state of peace and well-being. You start to realize that any movie can come on the screen and you will be able to maintain an equanimity through that. And it doesn't mean you won't get affected, or that you won't have to act in a way, or that you won't have to raise your voice, or you won't want to call out in traffic and say, "Hey, buddy, what the hell?" That's not losing. That's not losing it. That's just, it's you'd hopefully you won't then charge down and try and drive the guy off the road. You'll just have a reaction and let it go. You'll feel something. You're not going to stop feeling. You're not going to stop the emotions that well up on it, or in any situation. You're going to think and feel, but you're going to think and feel from that deeper, more stable perspective, because that's what you will have cultivated in your meditation. And that does take, perseverance. It takes, the long game. I often feel that when we first start meditating, and actually I saw this with a young friend who was coming to Satsang here recently, we often get given the gift of these wonderful experiences when we first start tuning into self-knowledge. When we first start meditating, there's often this kind of, and it's like, oh, wow. And you start to feel this beautiful warmth of like the vision of oneness as it floods through your being, and the world starts looking different, and your meditations are kind of lovely. It's such a contrast to what you have been living that it's a very strong sensation. And then it can start to plateau, and you start to feel like, I'm not getting the wow anymore. And that's when the work really begins. That's where you have to know that you're not going to keep getting those experiences. They were just experiences, and they'll come and go. But we have to realize that actually you just have to do the practice, and you just have to keep tuning in and meditating on that. And that means the satsang, as you were saying, all the tools, the satsang, the reading, to just lead your attention away from the trinkets of the world and all of its finery and all of the allurements that our ego wants to hook into for success and acceptance and love, and all of these things which can draw us out of who we are, because we think that's where I'll find peace. And keep your direction back towards, actually, no, this is only ever going to come from me, and I need to do the work, and there's nothing wrong with what anyone else is doing. This is my path, my trip. I have to stay focused and keep developing and cultivating this connection, and slowly and surely, I mean, it really does. It happens. But it's not that it's smooth sailing. It's not like a magic ticket. Once you start meditating and you have a bit of self-knowledge, that it's suddenly like, I get a free pass to life. As we all know, that just doesn't happen. but you don't have to suffer in the same way anymore. That's the thing. You really don't have to suffer. And it's such a good question, because it's the really everybody's wanting to know, how do I live this? Okay, I've got this. It can seem so separate, as if on one side I've got this knowledge and this meditation, and it seems my life is over here. And that's why when Shikhaa and I teach, we monthly have what's called a living wisdom retreat. And actually we started calling all of our retreats now Living Wisdom Retreat. Because look, if it's not practical for you and it's not something that you can take away and then start integrating into your life, it's not really much help. There's no point in being a kind of a weekend yogi where you come and you have this lovely spiritual experience, but you go away and then you're back in your life and it's like you're a deer in the headlights again. It's got to be tools and ways to live, and a slow integration that starts permeating every aspect of your life. And it's, the most wonderful, wonderful thing when we have people who keep coming back. We've had people who keep coming back and back and back, for the last, I think, nearly 3 years we've been doing them here in New Zealand now. And the family's slowly growing and growing. It's really beautiful to see, because you get those people who come and they're ready to come somewhere where they can just keep dipping in, just to keep them connected. So some people come nearly every month, or at least every 2 or 3 months when they can, and to hear them speak after a year and just say, gosh, this is like my life. I look back now and it's completely transformed from where I was a year ago. Just coming for that dip with with doing the satsang with other people, talking with like-minded people, sharing the meditation space, and then going away and just taking that practice without any big expectation back into their life. Just taking, we always say, like Swamiji used to say, 7 minutes at least. Just do that 7 minutes. Don't set yourself an unrealistic goal. Take that 7 minutes a day and just nurture it like a little seedling, and just sit with that every day and just watch how that grows into this beautiful plant of oneness that just starts permeating. It starts oozing out into your life. We're kind of a living testament to how that can manifest. We both feel this whole situation we've got here in New Zealand was really, it was kind of the Jack and the Beanstalk. We planted that magic bean 30 or 40 years ago at the feet of Swamiji, and just sat with him with faith and trust, and allowed that process to evolve. And then we came back here, and we just landed in such an amazing situation. We've got this beautiful home, and we've opened it up, and we've got our our yoga studio where we can just invite people to come and practice with us, because that's what we do. We just thought, we're not teaching anything that we're not living. And we're sitting here doing sadhana and meditating, and quite a bit of gardening too, but that's also part of it. But our classes are there because at least the first person I should be teaching is me. And now if I want to go into the yoga room and do that, I know you must feel the same with your yoga practice. It starts right here with me, with everything we do, isn't it? With our hatha yoga, with our meditation. And then if somebody wants to come and join you, then hey, that's one more flame to the fire. And how wonderful is that? And so we just came here and sat here, and it's beautiful to see. It's lovely to have that community kind of slowly start evolving, of like-minded beings who are coming and drawn like the moths to the flame, to their own true self, to just get lit and step up out of that identification, that heavy identification and suffering that comes with only knowing ourselves as a one-dimensional body mind, and missing that wonderful depth and freedom that is there for underlying all of humanity, that we can tap into. Yeah.
Wow,
Lovely.
beautiful. So I'm so not surprised that your community has sparked up so fast and brilliantly in New Zealand, because it is a kind of testament to you and Shikha's dedication to your sadhana and to the life that you've created. It's so beautiful and it's so inspiring for us younger folks to see. Like, actually, I feel I have so many amazing role models of
Mm,
of how to live the sadhana, like you said, like how to live the wisdom. It's so beautiful. And when you were
mm,
speaking, you really like said a brilliant point about building the relationship with self and with meditation. And I think it's so important to remember, and to that it's not just something we tick off the box,
mm,
like, oh, like even Swamiji, like I've said this so many times, like I remember him saying once that he didn't I'm paraphrasing, obviously. He didn't reach self-realization and then stop meditating. Like, the
mm,
practice goes on and on and on, and that's where the magic kind of happens after those first kind of sparks that happen when you
yeah,
come onto this path. Like, then actually through the churning of the practice and the
mm,
dedication, it it
mm,
it does kind of really start to permeate. I do feel that, and I do see that
yeah.
for myself.
And you kind of it does build a momentum too. That's the beautiful thing. Like it, you know, you start falling in love with the process, with the practice, with whatever you want to call it. All of these words can get too boxy, but with actually you fall in love with yourself, with the self, not your ego, individual self. You fall in love with that great, wonderful self being, that life force that you realize that you are, because your relationship or your knowingness, it's not even a relationship. These words, but we have to use them. But this knowingness that we are, when we start to recognize more and more that that's what is animating this form, that's where all of my thinking, all of my emotions, all that I am is coming from that. Everything that I'm doing is only because of that. um, and it just changes everything. And the more you put your attention on that, the stronger it is, the more familiar it is, the more comfortable you are with it. And the less and less you need to refer back or resort to your old ways of being, which is egocentric, individualistic, and usually full of pain. Because
Hmm.
as soon as we cut ourselves off from the whole, then pain is the result, and we all experience that. Except in the world of human thinking, then they're always trying to find other things to shift the pain, because they think that the pain's outside. But the yogi realizes that actually all the pain actually is only their own severance from the self, from self
Hmm.
knowledge, from knowing who they truly are. That's the height of discomfort. Um,
Beautiful.
and so it's a great blessing when you can recognize that, or you can hear that knowledge, and it can drop into you, and you go, oh yeah, this rings true. Actually, that brings me full circle, I think, back to my first trip back to Kulu. And I think that was the realization that I heard. Though, as I said, I probably only understood a tenth of what Swamiji was speaking, but what I heard was definitely that this knowing of yourself will take you out of this cycle of confusion and not knowing. Um, and
Hmm.
whatever I just said before, I can't remember what that was.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it was very beautiful. And when you were speaking, I was thinking about like how kind of interesting or like hard, almost unbelievable for the mind to kind of have
Mm,
these, like, even early on you were talking about the movie and the canvas, and how like we can't lose the self as that canvas. It's always
mm,
there, and it's all permeating, even if we meditate or we don't meditate. And yet there is this part or this attraction to meditate and to remember it and to
Mm,
as if get there. But like you said, like we can't lose it. And it's
no,
always the self is always everywhere, all permeating. It's the essence of life, the source, like you were so beautifully describing. And yet there is this digging and discovering to as if get somewhere.
yeah, yeah. That's the kind of conundrum, isn't it? It almost
Hmm.
seems like a hypocrisy, as if, well, if the self is all there, why do I need? If it's always there, I don't need to do anything. It's always there. But yet, to really know that, there's a difference between just going, oh yeah, the self's already there, but to know it and live from that space, we have to make efforts as this individual form. This ego identified being has to sort of be, um, yeah, we have to step out of it somehow. We have to make efforts to transform it into self-awareness. It's like I always think it's like whatever, Swamiji used to always say, be careful what you wish for or what you think you will become. That was something I remember hearing him saying very early on when I met him, and just thinking how profound that was, what you think you will become. So if you think that you're born and you're going to die, and that this existence that popped out of your mother is the totality of who you are, and all your thoughts are yours, and everything that you think and feel is all yours, then you get very much into a kind of a rut of me existence. And it can be quite painful because, as I was just saying, you'll never become aware that you're disconnected from anything. When people talk about knowing myself or being my true self, they think that means being my authentic human identified being. And of course, if you strip all that back and look at your upbringing and your family and your country, you realize that actually you're just a collection of ideas and conditions and ideologies and dogmas that you've been born into and you've taken on as being true to who you are, with other stuff and family stuff and experiences all laid in on that into this wonderful complex web. But we don't often put our attention on that which is the formless existence of who we are. Those are all the very obvious things. But just like when you're watching a movie, how often do you watch a movie and actually go, there's a clear canvas behind there and I can still see it through all the colors, and therefore I'm not affected by it? Or how often do you look at a photograph and go, it's just a piece of white paper, and then there's all these colors and dots have been put on it, and now I'm saying it's a beautiful picture of that? Like, we don't. And so that's what we do in meditation. We start looking through all of the obvious stuff to seeing what is knowing all of this. What's the knower, the seer, the observer, all of these. So unless we give that some power and attention, which is not easy for the human consciousness because it so wants to move towards form. It wants to make a form of everything. That's what it does. It needs to do that also to survive. It's not wrong. So that's the thing. That's the other thing. We don't need to discard what we are and who we are and how we function. All of this human functioning is really wonderful. It's an amazing thing. But we can enhance our life and who we are and the way we live our life by adding that extra dimension of taking some time to put attention onto the very background of who's knowing all of this. Basically, that the Ramana Maharshi, who am I? And then Swami Sham, I am I. We don't even have to ask the question anymore. We can start reinforcing. What is that? It's I. Not I am this, it's I. It's the I that every living being, if it can speak, can say I. Every breath of wind is saying I. Every wave, every breeze, every tree, all of existence is actually that hum, as it is in Hindi, hum, the I, which is permeating all. So yeah, unless we can give that some attention, some energy, some some focus, then the power of that doesn't come through and start infusing into our waking state human existence. And I think that's the hardest thing for the human being to overcome, is to shift the attention from the formless, from the form to the formless, because it is so intangible. It can seem like it's nothing. And we've grown up in a very scientific age where unless you can prove it, it doesn't exist. And this has been our training, for decades, for hundreds of years. This has been the way the human consciousness has evolved. But I think um, there's always been those human beings who are ready to take that step. And that's why I guess they talk about it being a step into the unknown. It's only unknown because it's formless, but actually it is the known. It's all that's known. It is the very knowingness itself. That's the amazing thing about it. So, but for human consciousness, it seems like it's nothing, or it's a waste of time, you know. So
Mm-hmm.
to somehow, that's why I was saying, those experiences that we can have when we first start meditating, they really are gifts, because they let us know that there's something there. Don't try and figure it out with your human, rational, intellectual mind and make sense of it, or try and understand it on that level of intellectual understanding. It's the very source of intelligence. It's not intellect, it's intelligence. It is the intelligence. Intelligence has no form. It has the ability to illuminate all the things, but it itself is just pure being. So yeah,
Mm.
and I think that's the beauty of satsang and community, is that to read these things together, to talk together, to keep the attention flowing in that direction. Um, that is like digging a groove, just like practicing anything. Um, you can't learn your scales on the piano in one sitting. You don't go to a piano teacher once and go, this happened to us recently. We were laughing about it. You don't go to somewhere to meditate and expect that you're going to walk out after 10 minutes and go, okay, I'm a meditator now, I've got it. I mean, some people might. That's wonderful. Kudos to that teacher or to that person for getting it. But the expectation is that, like anything, you have to give it some time. You have to give it some energy. You have to, give it some energy, just like you do learning anything. So yeah, so
Yeah. And I think like
time.
it's, yeah, time. And like you said a little bit earlier, just add 7 minutes a day, like how you said you say that to your students. And I even say that to myself. Like sometimes it feels like such a crunch to exist in the world that's so, like you said, scientific and time oriented and task oriented and
Mm,
productivity oriented, to just
yeah,
say to oneself, like, I can sit for 7 minutes. That's
yeah,
something tangible that I can do. And that's how the relationship gets nourished. And then suddenly that 7 minutes sometimes becomes 10 minutes. And then
yeah, yeah,
like it's kind of beautiful to see it naturally evolve, kind of as if on its own. Of course, some effort and attention is required, like you're
yeah.
saying, like we have to put in
Mm,
the practice. But when we put
mm,
in the practice, it does start to kind of bubble up and
mhm,
expand
yeah,
out, and it's really
yeah.
beautiful.
And I mean, one thing we find we're reiterating a lot is all the misconceptions around meditation that are out there too. I mean, there's so many meditations, types of meditation. It's such a broad term now, you know. And again, it can become very confining that people, like, what is meditation? I mean, this is a huge topic, and people are looking for experience in meditation, and
Mm,
they might have heard somebody say something, so they're thinking. I mean, of course, the biggest misnomer is my mind. I can't stop my mind in meditation, you know, and this is nearly everybody comes up against this at some point. And
right.
don't try and stop your mind. Your mind is not a hindrance to meditation. Your body is not a hindrance. Your thinking is not a problem.
Yeah.
Close your eyes and watch. It's so simple.
Mm-hmm.
Don't worry about what comes. You can think anything,
Mm.
and watch what will happen actually if you sit and keep sitting and just watching and not having an idea, not having a concept about what it should be, because that's assuming your mind will stop is taking doership into meditation, as if you're going to do meditation. I remember a big turning point for me was suddenly realizing I don't do meditation. Meditation does me.
Nice. That's great. Yeah, it's very
Just flip it
true.
around, like
Yeah.
just well, or like I think Swamiji used to say it. Also, he said when you go to bed, you don't do sleep. Sleep comes. You just create the environment. You lie down and you close your eyes. You could
Nice.
say that the same thing with meditation to a certain extent. Create the environment. Read something which inspires you, which takes you out of your normal relative waking consciousness, something that elevates you into something a bit more expanded than what your day-to-day cups and saucers are.
Mm.
And then close your eyes and just sit with that and don't worry about what comes. Let the thoughts come. Let your mind go off on different tangents, and then of course we get into all the tools of meditation, is using mantra, anything that reverberates beautifully in your system. Of course, we all learn Amaram Hum, Madaram Hum, and we freely share it, as you know, um, which just helps you come back and focuses the mind somewhere if your thoughts are bothering you, if you feel like you need to.
Mm.
But to sit and to not feel you have to be doing anything, rather being non-doer, and allow meditation to meditate you as you allow sleep to sleep you. It's a kind of an
Nice.
okay analogy.
I love it. It's actually something that one could take and that's memorable, you know? So I love that. And I we could really keep chatting for ages, and
What
I've
have
just
we done an hour? This is not fair. We want more time.
yeah, that like I said, we live in a time-focused world as
Yeah,
I have to run shortly to teach a class, but just to
nice.
wrap up, I
Mm.
love to ask the guests three quick questions, just short answer questions. So the first one is, what is the scripture that you go to, or currently, or over all time, like your go-to scripture that inspires your sadhana?
Mm. Probably Yog Vashisht.
Nice, beautiful. And if you could describe your personal sadhana in 3 words.
Oh, oh, that's quite tough. Okay, I'll just think one at a time. Okay,
Mhm.
um, easy, focused, and light.
Beautiful, nice. That I think that sums up Mayank in 3 words
Ah,
also. And
oh, thank you.
and finally, if you could sum up this conversation in one sentence.
Well, I told you before, I think you're delightful, and I think this is such a cool thing that you do, and you host it so beautifully. So I'm delighted to be here. I feel like you just have put me into a beautiful rolling flow, and you know how to listen and you know how to inspire. So it's been a very inspiring, flowing, very enjoyable talk. And I think, there's so much, as you've spoken and as you've said, I've opened doors, and as you've responded, you keep opening more doors for me. So, I mean, that's true satsang. So,
Mm.
great satsang. Thank you so much for allowing this to flow out, because unless you've got that beautiful receptivity on the other side, you can't really speak freely. And I feel like I've been able to speak just really freely and from the heart. And that's, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Mayank. And for those that are listening, I'm going to put the links for your September retreat in the Himalayas with Shikhaa in the show notes. And I'm going to put the previous episode that I had recorded with Shikhaa in the show notes also, if people want to go back and listen. And yeah, and some of the YouTube links. You and Shikhaa also have amazing music that you play in Kirtan. So I'll just plug everything. So if people want to find you, they can come to New Zealand to your amazing center, which is on my bucket list, or
Oh, yeah.
or they can find you guys online and come spend 2 weeks with you in the Himalayas, which I would highly recommend.
Yeah.
So I'll put all that in there, and it's just been so amazing to see you, Mayank, after so long. And please give my love to Shikha and to your mom and everybody, and lots of love.
Yeah. Awesome. You're amazing. Thank you. Yeah.
You're
Thank you
you're
for.
amazing. So
Yeah.
I go to run here as usual.
Yeah.
I'm always running somewhere late. But I'm gonna just I'll post this later on in the week. So when you drop me your bio, if you also want to just put any of those links that I can put in, like I think you guys have a SoundCloud even with your music, like any of
Yeah.
that stuff I can put in.
Bandcamp. Yeah.
Bandcamp,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I'll
So
send you the.
any of
Yeah.
that, that's great.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool.
Cool.
Yeah. Great.
Okay,
Great.
lots of love and have a great evening and good, so good
Yeah.
to
You
see you
too.
and connect. Lots of love.
Yeah. 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 When are you going back to Kulu?
Not till January. I'm kind of in this winter phase now where I'm here. I'm trying to integrate into Swedish society. It's like a whole thing right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I did finally catch up with VJ the other day. We finally did a chat.
yeah.
So I heard you're just across the bridge. I said, it's like an episode of The Bridge. You're
Yeah,
right.
exactly. To the
Yeah.
Yogi Bridge though.
Yeah, Yogi Bridge, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, I gotta run. Lots of love.
Bye, darling. Thank
Amaram
you.
Ham, Madaram Ham. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Okay. Bye.